So tomorrow, former Eskom CEO de Ruyter will appear virtually before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. They want details on his allegations during an interview on eNCA that ANC politicians were involved in corruption at the power utility. This, of course, comes at a time when we're sitting in stage 6 power cuts. There's uncertainty over the future of old coal-fired power stations that were, of course, due to be decommissioned, targets that we have set as a country to be in line around our just energy transition. The electricity minister, with, it seems, ANC support, wants to delay those closures, hoping it'll bring more power to the grid. Well, I'm joined now by energy expert Chris Yelland. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. So tomorrow is going to be a really interesting day because SCOPA wants to hear from Andre de Ruyter who he was talking about when he said in that interview with eNCA Larson that there was at least one high-profile ANC politician who was so-called at the feeding trough of Eskom. Do you think he's going to name names?
Yeah, it's a hard one, obviously, but I think the fact that he's talking to Parliament, I hope that gives him some kind of parliamentary privilege. I'm not sure if that privilege extends to people that are being interviewed by Parliament, or whether it only extends to parliamentarians themselves. But I think this is a big opportunity in a public forum, in what I think is some kind of a protected environment, to really say what is on his mind. Whether this will extend to naming names, I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think the whole country is sitting on the edge of their chair, probably with a packet of popcorn at their side, because it's going to be riveting viewing.
He's not appearing in person. He's appearing virtually. Do you know why?
I don't know why. I'm not sure whether he's out of the country or not. I just don't know. So we'll just have to wait and see. I don't have any inside information that I can share on the matter, other than what I've read in the media about his appearing, virtually. Correct.
You, of course, broke that story, if I'm not mistaken, about the attempted poisoning, where cyanide, I think, was actually picked up in his blood after a cup of coffee, apparently laced with cyanide, was given to him. Do you think that he fears for his life currently?
Yes, I do. Assassinations, political assassinations of various kinds are rife in South Africa. Within days of his attempted murder, or the attempted cyanide poisoning against him, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare was subject to an attempted assassination in which his bodyguard was actually killed. And it had the effect that the assassinators, or the assassins, shall I say, wanted. Within a day or so, that Vice-Chancellor resigned from his position. It was just not worth the risk to himself and his family, to proceed. And that, of course, is exactly what these assassins are trying to achieve. I think there are significant risks, or there were at that time, while he was the CEO, there were significant risks against him, and there probably are now as well, if he is given an opportunity to incriminate people at a very high level, whether they are politicians, whether they are local mafias in the Mpumalanga area, which seems to be the epicenter of criminal activity, around the coal fields and the transportation of coal. And all that goes along with those power stations, which are concentrated in Mpumalanga, where there is a lot of criminality and corruption taking place. So it may be, and I think he has reason to believe, through this assassination attempt against his life, that there could be risks, significant risks against him, and that may be a reason why he's appearing virtually.
So currently we're still sitting in stage 6 power cuts. Before de Ruyter resigned, there were quite a lot of ongoing calls, in fact, for him to leave, suggestions that he wasn't the right person for the job, that he didn't have the necessary expertise. There's been no magical change in the time since his departure. Does it vindicate him in any way?
Well, the problems at Eskom go long and deep and are not made by one person, and in fact were rife long before his appointment. And the criminality continued during his appointment. But that, of course, is not the only problems that Eskom face. They have old plant that is performing very poorly. It's been poorly maintained. It's been abused. It hasn't been serviced as it should have been. And to think that just changing the CEO changes the picture dramatically is obviously not correct. And we've seen proof of this. I remember when the load shedding suddenly dropped for a couple of days during a long weekend. Everybody got really excited that this was a sign that things were coming right. But the situation is very volatile, and it takes more than a couple of days. You really have to look at the performance of this plant over an extended period, like a week or in fact, much longer, a month, 3 months, 6 months, even a year, to get a good idea of a trend. You can't look at, there's a lot of noise in the energy availability factor, that you can't just look at it over a week or a day.
Yeah, it's going to take a long time. It's like a big ship to turn around. I want to ask you a little bit about this ongoing debate about whether we should be considering keeping these old coal-fired power stations that in the next few years are due to be decommissioned, keep them perhaps going for as long as possible. We know it will be costly, but we also look at other countries around the world sort of starting to keep coal in their back pocket because of the instability around the war in Ukraine, for example. Would it be prudent for us to re-look at those targets, do you think, and say, even though, and I mean, I'm seeing in the news today, Business Day reporting, the government set to unveil what they call a mega project, huge solar, massive bid window coming up. That's all going to take time. Shouldn't we just hang on to those coal-fired power stations as long as we can?
Well, look, there's two sort of options for these old coal-fired power stations. And the first thing I want to say is you've got to remember, these are not big power stations. These are actually relatively small power stations in the world of Eskom. So we mustn't think that, it's going to make a massive difference. But the one option, of course, is just to carry on running them. They are at end of life, but just carry on past end of life. Just don't spend money on them. Don't refurbish them. Don't retrofit flue gas desulfurization and try and get them environmentally compliant, because it costs too much, it costs too long, and you have to shut them down for a long time to do that. In other words, just run them until they drop. That's one approach. Just keep on running them until they drop, and they will drop. They will be performing badly. And eventually it just is not economical to run them. It actually costs more to operate them than not to have them. And the other option is to actually extend their life. So the one is what I call delay the shutdown, and the other one is life extension. And life extension will involve a significant investment, not only in money, but in time and skills and spares and effort to actually refurbish, and you would have to shut down the plant for extended periods in order to do the retrofits that are necessary to make them compliant, bring them up to scratch, and to extend their life by another 10 years. I don't think that is realistic. So if anything, I would suggest that the first option is the likely option. Government doesn't have the money to spend. Eskom certainly doesn't have the money to spend. And I think they're probably going to just run them longer and harder until they drop.
It's an important distinction you make. Thank you so much. Energy expert Chris Yelland saying the one option is just to keep them puttering on as long as they can, but not to put in any new investment. So if they manage to extend beyond their targets for closure, then I suppose that would be good news for us.